The underestimated cadet. The transport shuttle vibrated as it descended through Kepler Station's atmosphere. Maya Chen pressed her face against the small window, watching the massive military academy grow larger below. The Galactic Defense Academy was legendary across human space. Only the best of the best earned admission. Maya still couldn't believe she was here. "First time seeing the academy?" asked the cadet sitting next to her. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the confident smile of someone who belonged. His uniform was perfectly pressed, his blonde hair regulation short. "I'm Derek Morrison. My father graduated top of his class here in 2387. Maya nodded politely. "Maya Chen. And yes, first time." Derek's eyes swept over her small frame dismissively. Maya was used to this reaction. At barely 5 feet tall and weighing less than most academy textbooks, she looked more like a lost child than a future space marine. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her uniform hung loosely on her thin shoulders. "What's your background?" Derek continued. "Military family? Special forces training? Colony farming?" Maya replied quietly. Derek's eyebrows shot up. "Farming? How did you even get accepted? Did you have connections or something?" Before Maya could answer, the shuttle touched down with a gentle bump. The other cadets immediately began gathering their gear, chattering excitedly about their families' military traditions and previous training. Maya listened to stories of private tutors, expensive combat schools, and family connections that stretched back generations. She shouldered her simple duffel bag and followed the crowd toward the academy entrance. The building was enormous, all gleaming metal and reinforced glass designed to withstand orbital bombardment. Recruitment banners hung from the walls showing heroic humans fighting alongside alien allies against various threats across the galaxy. "Welcome to the Galactic Defense Academy," boomed a voice from the front of the group. A stern-faced woman in Admiral's stripes stepped forward. "I am Admiral Rodriguez, your commandant. You are here because someone believes you have what it takes to defend humanity and our allies across the stars." Maya felt a chill of excitement. This was really happening. "However," the Admiral continued, her voice growing harder, "believing you belong here and actually belonging here are two very different things. Over the next 4 years, we will push you beyond your limits. Many of you will wash out. Some of you will break. Only the strongest will earn the right to wear the uniform of the Galactic Defense Force." The Admiral's eyes swept over the assembled cadets. When her gaze fell on Maya, it lingered for just a moment longer than the others. Maya couldn't tell if that was good or bad. "You will now be assigned to your dormitories and squads. Your first training exercise begins at 600 tomorrow. Do not be late." Maya found herself assigned to Dragon Squad along with Derek and 11 other cadets. Their squad leader was a senior cadet named Marcus Webb, a mountain of a man who looked like he could bench press a shuttle. As they walked to their barracks, Maya noticed the other cadets naturally gravitating toward Derek and a few others who looked the part of future military officers. "So Chen," said another cadet, a red-haired girl named Sarah Kim, whose parents were both fleet captains. "What made you think you could handle military life coming from farming?" The question wasn't malicious, but Maya heard the underlying assumption that she didn't belong here. "I suppose we'll find out," she replied. Their dormitory was a long, sterile hall lined with bunk beds. Maya was assigned a bottom bunk in the corner, which suited her fine. She quietly unpacked her few belongings while listening to the others compare their entrance exam scores and training backgrounds. "I scored 98th percentile on tactical assessment," Derek was saying. "My hand-to-hand combat instructor said I was the most naturally gifted student he'd ever seen." "That's impressive," Sarah replied. "I got perfect scores on weapon systems and zero-G maneuvering. Been training since I was 6. Maya focused on arranging her simple clothes in the small locker. She had no impressive scores to share, no family traditions to discuss. Her acceptance letter had been as much a surprise to her as it apparently was to everyone else. That evening during their first squad meeting, Marcus Webb looked over his new charges with obvious disappointment. His eyes lingered on Maya with particular concern. "All right, Dragon Squad," he began. "I'm going to be straight with you. This academy has a 40% dropout rate in the first year alone. Combat training is brutal. Academic standards are merciless. And the physical requirements will push you past anything you've experienced before." He pulled up holographic displays showing training scenarios. urban combat simulations, zero-gravity assault courses, and weapon proficiency tests that looked impossibly complex. Your first major evaluation is in 2 weeks, combat simulation exercise. You'll be ranked against all other first-year squads, and the bottom performers will be reviewed for dismissal. His eyes found Maya again. I suggest you use every minute between now and then to prepare. After the meeting, Maya overheard Derek talking to Sarah and a few others near the common area. I feel bad for Webb, Derek was saying. He's got dead weight in his squad. That Chen girl is going to drag down our whole performance rating. I don't understand how she even got in, Sarah agreed. Maybe there was some kind of diversity quota they had to fill. Whatever the reason, said another cadet, she's not going to last 2 weeks. This isn't a farm where you can take your time with things. Combat is fast, brutal, and unforgiving. Maya stood in the shadows outside the common area, listening to their casual dismissal of her abilities. Part of her wanted to march in there and defend herself, but what would she say? That she was stronger than she looked? That there was more to her than farming? She had no proof, no impressive credentials to wave around. Instead, she quietly returned to her bunk and pulled out her tablet to review the training materials they'd been given. While her squad mates socialized and boasted about their backgrounds, Maya studied. She memorized weapon specifications, tactical formations, and combat procedures until her eyes burned. Tomorrow would bring their first real test. Maya knew she had everything to prove and no room for error. The other cadets had already written her off, but she hadn't come this far to give up now. Whatever challenges the academy threw at her, she would face them head-on. As lights out approached and the dormitory settled into quiet murmurs, Maya closed her eyes and thought about home. The farm where she'd grown up wasn't glamorous, but it had taught her things these other cadets might not understand yet. Patience, determination, and the value of hard work when no one was watching. Tomorrow, she would begin to show them what a farm girl could really do. First contact with reality. The alarm screamed at exactly 600 hours, jolting Maya from a dreamless sleep. Around her, Dragon Squad stumbled from their bunks, grumbling and cursing. Derek emerged from the top bunk across from her looking surprisingly alert. His hair somehow still perfectly styled despite having just woken up. Move it, dragons. Marcus Webb's voice boomed from the doorway. You have 15 minutes to get dressed and report to Training Ground Alpha. Anyone who's late gets to run laps until they puke. Maya grabbed her training gear and rushed to the communal showers with the other female cadets. The facilities were functional but crowded, with barely enough time for everyone to get ready. Sarah Kim elbowed past her at the sinks, muttering something about slow farm girls under her breath. Training Ground Alpha turned out to be a massive, indoor facility that could have housed 3 shuttles comfortably. Obstacle courses, climbing walls, and combat training areas stretched out under harsh artificial lighting. The space hummed with the energy of hundreds of first-year cadets preparing for their morning session. Welcome to your new home away from home, announced their combat instructor, Sergeant Torres. He was a grizzled veteran with scars crossing his dark skin and cybernetic implants replacing his left eye and arm. For the next 4 years, you'll spend more time here than anywhere else. Some of you will come to love this place. Others will learn to fear it. His good eye swept over Dragon Squad, pausing briefly on each member before moving on. When his gaze reached Maya, she straightened her shoulders and met his stare directly. Something flickered in his expression, curiosity perhaps, or amusement. Today we start with basic fitness assessment, Torres continued. Pull-ups, distance running, obstacle navigation, and hand-to-hand combat fundamentals. I need to see what raw material I'm working with before we can begin actual training. The pull-up station was first. Derek stepped up confidently, grabbing the bar with practiced ease. His form was textbook perfect as he cranked out 25 repetitions without obvious strain. The other cadets murmured approvingly. Solid foundation, Morrison, Torres noted, making marks on his digital tablet. Keep that up. Sarah managed 18 pull-ups with good form, followed by most of the male cadets hitting numbers between 15 and 22. When Maya's turn came, several cadets openly snickered. This should be entertaining, she heard someone whisper. Maya approached the bar without fanfare. At her height, she had to jump slightly to reach it, which drew more chuckles from the watching crowd. She wrapped her fingers around the cold metal and took a deep breath. Then she began to pull. Her first few repetitions looked effortless, her small frame rising and falling with mechanical precision. By the 10th rep, the snickering had stopped. By the 20th, cadets were counting aloud. Maya continued climbing, her breathing steady and controlled. 30, 40, 50. Holy shit, someone breathed. Maya's muscles burned, but years of hauling, equipment and livestock on the farm had built a wiry strength that wasn't obvious from her appearance. She pushed through the pain, focusing on technique and breathing just like her father had taught her when they worked the fields together. 60, 70. Chen, Torres called out sharply. That's enough. Excellent work. Maya dropped from the bar, breathing hard but not gasping. The training ground had gone quiet around Dragon Squad's station. Even Derek was staring at her with a mixture of surprise and something that might have been respect. 73 repetitions, Torres announced to his tablet. Outstanding upper body strength to weight ratio. He looked up at Maya with new interest. Farm work, you said? Yes, sir. Livestock and crop management on Kepler 7. Heavy gravity world, Torres noted approvingly. That explains a few things. The running assessment came next, a 5-kilometer course that wound through the academy grounds and included several elevation changes. Maya found herself grouped with the middle pack as they started. Derek and the obviously athletic cadets taking an early lead. What the others hadn't considered was endurance. Growing up on a farm meant chasing escaped animals across kilometers of rough terrain, working 16-hour days during harvest season, and never having the luxury of giving up when things got difficult. By the 2nd kilometer, Maya had moved into the front group. By the 4th, she was running alongside Derek, matching his pace step for step. He glanced over at her with growing confusion. How are you keeping up? He panted. Maya wasn't winded enough to waste breath on conversation. She simply maintained her steady rhythm, the same pace she'd used to track down stray cattle across the hills back home. When Derek tried to surge ahead in the final kilometer, Maya matched him effortlessly. They crossed the finish line together, with Maya actually edging ahead by half a step. Derek doubled over, gasping, while Maya jogged in a small circle to cool down. 22 minutes, 15 seconds, Torres called out as more cadets finished behind them. Excellent time for both Morrison and Chen. The obstacle course was where Maya truly began to shine. The complex series of walls, rope climbs, balance beams, and crawling spaces had been designed to test agility, problem-solving, and determination. What it actually tested was something Maya had in abundance, the ability to navigate difficult terrain quickly and efficiently. She approached each obstacle methodically, watching other cadets struggle with technique before finding her own solution. Where others used brute force to muscle over walls, Maya used momentum and leverage. Where they fought against rope climbs, she found rhythm and flow. Her small size became an advantage in tight spaces where larger cadets had to struggle through. Her farm-trained balance served her well on narrow beams where others wobbled and fell. Most importantly, she never panicked or gave up when an approach didn't work. She simply tried something else. Maya finished the obstacle course 3rd overall among all first-year cadets, behind only 2 senior transfers who had previous military training. Derek finished 8th, which was still respectable but clearly frustrated him. Where did that come from? Sarah asked as they gathered for the final assessment of the day. Her earlier dismissive attitude had been replaced by genuine curiosity. Farm life teaches you to adapt, Maya replied simply. The hand-to-hand combat assessment was supposed to be basic, just simple grappling and defensive techniques to establish baseline skill levels. Torres paired them off randomly, warning everyone to focus on control and technique rather than trying to hurt each other. Maya found herself matched against James Park, one of the larger male cadets who'd been part of Derek's informal leadership group. James had 6 inches and at least 50 pounds on her, plus he'd mentioned training in mixed martial arts since middle school. Try not to get hurt, James said, not unkindly. I'll take it easy on you. They circled each other in the designated ring, other cadets gathering to watch what everyone assumed would be a quick demonstration of why physical size mattered in combat. Torres observed from the sideline, his expression unreadable. James moved first, reaching out to grab Maya's shoulders in what should have been a simple takedown. What happened next surprised everyone, including Maya herself. Her body moved without conscious thought, muscle memory taking over from countless hours spent wrestling with livestock and dealing with aggressive animals. She slipped James's grab, pivoted on her left foot, and used his own momentum to send him stumbling past her. James recovered quickly and tried again, this time more cautiously. Maya waited, patient and balanced, until he committed to another attack. This time she stepped into his grab instead of away from it, got her shoulder under his center of gravity, and executed a perfect hip toss that sent him tumbling across the mat. The watching cadets erupted in surprised shouts. James climbed to his feet, his face red with embarrassment and anger. "Lucky shot," he muttered, then charged at Maya with less control than before. This was a mistake. Maya sidestepped smoothly, caught his extended arm, and used a joint lock her father had taught her for controlling aggressive bulls. James went down hard and stayed down until Maya released the hold. "Enough," Torres called out. "Excellent demonstration, Chen. Park, work on your control and balance." As the cadets dispersed for evening chow, Maya found herself walking alone again. The dynamic had shifted, though. Instead of dismissive chatter, she now heard whispered conversations about her performance. Some were impressed, others were trying to rationalize what they'd seen. "She just got lucky," she heard Derek telling Sarah. "Size and strength still matter most in real combat." "I don't know," Sarah replied thoughtfully. "Did you see how she moved?" "That wasn't luck." Maya kept her expression neutral, but inside she felt a small spark of satisfaction. One day of training had shaken their assumptions about her, but she knew this was just the beginning. The real tests were still ahead, and her squad mates would need time to decide whether her performance was a fluke or a sign of things to come. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and Maya was ready for all of them. Rising through the ranks, 3 weeks into academy life, Maya had settled into a routine that would have broken most people. Every morning brought 5 kilometers of running, followed by combat training, weapons instruction, tactical simulations, and enough academic coursework to challenge graduate students. The pace was relentless, designed to weed out anyone who couldn't handle the pressure. Dragon Squad had already lost 2 members. One cadet had quit after failing 3 consecutive weapons safety tests. Another had been dismissed following a panic attack during a claustrophobic training exercise. The remaining 13 members were bonding through shared exhaustion and the growing realization that they were all struggling to keep up. All of them except Maya. "It's not normal," Derek complained during their evening study session. He was hunched over tactical manuals, his usually perfect appearance showing signs of strain. Dark circles shadowed his eyes and his blonde hair was disheveled from running his hands through it in frustration. "Look at her. She's not even tired." Across the common room, Maya sat calmly working through advanced physics problems while simultaneously reviewing combat formations on her tablet. Her notebooks were filled with neat handwriting and detailed diagrams. She looked as fresh as she had on their first day. "Maybe she's just better at managing her time," Sarah suggested, though she sounded uncertain. Sarah herself was struggling with the physical demands of training, despite her impressive background. "Or maybe she's not human," muttered James Park. He was still bitter about their hand-to-hand combat session, especially since Maya had continued to dominate every sparring match they'd had since then. The truth was simpler than any of them realized. Maya had grown up on a world where 18-hour workdays were normal during planting and harvest seasons. She'd been handling physical labor, problem-solving under pressure, and managing complex schedules since she was 12 years old. Academy. Life was challenging, but it wasn't harder than what she'd already survived. Their first major test came in the form of a complex wargame simulation. Each squad would be given a scenario involving orbital assault, ground combat, and civilian evacuation. They would be judged on tactical decision-making, teamwork, adaptability, and execution under pressure. The bottom 3 squads would face individual review for potential dismissal. "This is where breeding shows," Derek told the assembled Dragon Squad members as they prepared for the simulation. He'd naturally assumed leadership of their group, and Marcus Webb had allowed it since Derek seemed to have the confidence of most members. My father always said that when the pressure's on, training and instinct take over. Those of us with military backgrounds will shine. Maya said nothing, but she'd spent the previous evening analyzing the simulation parameters and developing contingency plans for 17 different scenarios. While her squad mates had been socializing or cramming last-minute tactical knowledge, she'd been thinking 3 steps ahead. The simulation threw them into a chaotic urban environment under orbital bombardment. Their mission was to secure a landing zone for evacuation shuttles while protecting a group of civilian refugees from enemy forces. They had limited ammunition, no heavy weapons, and a 30-minute time limit. Derek immediately took charge, deploying the squad in a standard defensive formation around the civilians. It was textbook military doctrine, the kind of approach that had worked for generations of human forces. It was also exactly what their simulated enemies were expecting. Within 5 minutes, they were pinned down by sniper fire from multiple angles. 2 squad members had been tagged as casualties by the simulation, and their defensive perimeter was shrinking rapidly. Derek was calling out orders, but the situation was deteriorating faster than he could adapt. "Morrison," Maya called out during a brief lull in the simulated gunfire. "Permission to attempt flanking maneuver?" Derek looked frustrated and desperate. "Do it. Take Park and Williams with you." Maya shook her head. "I'll go alone. Keep everyone here focused on defense." Before Derek could object, Maya was moving. She'd spotted something during her initial survey of the battlefield, a damaged building that could provide access to higher ground if someone was small enough and agile enough to navigate the debris. What followed was a display of urban combat skills that left her squad members stunned. Maya moved through the simulated battlefield like water flowing around obstacles, using cover and misdirection to avoid enemy fire while working her way toward the sniper positions that were causing their biggest problems. She reached the damaged building and began climbing through a maze of twisted metal and concrete that would have been impossible for larger squad members to navigate. The simulation's AI was sophisticated enough to recognize her unconventional approach and adapted the enemy responses accordingly, but Maya was thinking faster than the program could adjust. 10 minutes later, she'd eliminated 3 sniper positions and was calling down targeting information for the squad's remaining heavy weapons. Derek's defensive position suddenly became sustainable, then advantageous. With the high ground secured, they could safely begin moving civilians toward the extraction point. "How did she do that?" Sarah breathed, watching Maya's position markers on their tactical display as she continued to clear enemy positions with surgical precision. "I don't know," Derek admitted. "But it's working." Maya's solo assault had turned a losing battle into a potential victory, but the simulation wasn't over. Enemy reinforcements were approaching the extraction zone, and the evacuation shuttles were still 10 minutes out. They needed to hold their position against overwhelming odds. "Chen, get back here," Derek ordered. "We need to consolidate our defense." "Negative." Maya's voice came through their comm system, calm despite the chaos around her. "I can delay their reinforcements from up here. Just keep the civilians safe." What followed was 12 minutes of the most intense simulated combat any of them had ever experienced. Maya had positioned herself in a location where she could hit the enemy reinforcements from an unexpected angle, forcing them to take cover and slowing their advance. Meanwhile, Dragon Squad held their perimeter with increasing confidence as Maya's tactical updates kept them ahead of enemy movements. When the extraction shuttles finally arrived, Dragon Squad had suffered only 2 additional casualties while successfully protecting all civilian refugees. More importantly, they'd accomplished their mission in a way that no other squad would think to attempt. "Simulation complete," announced the computerized voice. "Final assessment, Dragon Squad. Mission success, exceptional innovation, 0 civilian casualties. Overall rating, 94 out of 100. The simulation chamber powered down, leaving 13 exhausted cadets blinking in the sudden quiet. Dragon Squad had achieved the highest score of any first-year team in the past 3 years. "That was incredible," Sarah exclaimed, turning to look at Maya with new respect. "Where did you learn to move like that?" Maya shrugged as she checked her equipment. You learn to be creative when you're chasing escaped livestock through broken terrain. Animals don't follow predictable patterns, so you have to think differently. Derek was staring at her with an expression that mixed admiration with something that might have been resentment. His textbook leadership had nearly led to failure, while Maya's unconventional approach had saved them all. "Good work, Chen," he said finally. That was unexpected. Over the following week, word of Dragon Squad's simulation performance spread throughout the first-year class. Maya found herself the subject of curious stares and whispered conversations. Some cadets were impressed. Others were skeptical, and a few seemed threatened by her success. The most interesting reaction came from their instructors. Sergeant Torres began paying closer attention to Maya's training, often pairing her with more advanced opponents or giving her additional challenges. Admiral Rodriguez herself stopped by their combat sessions twice, observing Maya's performance with calculating eyes. "Chen," Torres called out after a particularly intensive sparring session where Maya had defeated 3 opponents in succession. "Stay after class. I want to discuss something with you." As the other cadets filed out, Torres approached Maya with his characteristic directness. "I've been reviewing your performance data. Your scores are exceptional across the board, but there's something else. You think differently than most cadets. Where did that come from?" Maya considered her answer carefully. "Growing up on a frontier, farm teaches you that conventional solutions don't always work. Sometimes you have to find new ways to solve old problems." Torres nodded slowly. "There's advanced training available for cadets who show exceptional potential. Specialized programs that go beyond standard academy curriculum. Would you be interested?" Maya felt her heart rate increase, but she kept her voice steady. "What kind of training?" "The kind that prepares you for missions where conventional tactics won't work, where thinking differently isn't just an advantage, it's a necessity." Torres's cybernetic eye whirred softly as it focused on her. "Think about it. Let me know by tomorrow." As Maya walked back to the dormitory, her mind was racing. Advanced training meant opportunities she'd never dreamed of, but it also meant leaving her squad behind and facing even greater challenges. More importantly, it meant that her instructors had noticed something in her that went beyond simple competence. She was no longer just the farm girl who'd surprised everyone. She was becoming something else entirely, and Maya wasn't sure if she was ready for whatever came next. That night, as Dragon Squad celebrated their simulation victory with contraband snacks and quiet conversation, Maya lay in her bunk thinking about the choice ahead of her. Around her, she could hear her squad mates discussing their own futures with new confidence. Derek was already talking about officer track programs, and Sarah was considering specialized fleet training. Maya smiled in the darkness. Whatever she chose, she was no longer the underestimated outsider. She'd proven herself in ways that mattered, and there was no going back to being invisible. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight she could finally rest knowing that she belonged here just as much as anyone else. The crucible Maya's decision to accept the advanced training program came with immediate consequences. 3 days after her conversation with Sergeant Torres, she found herself separated from Dragon Squad and assigned to a specialized unit called Alpha Division. The dozen cadets selected for this program were housed in a separate facility and followed a curriculum that remained mysteriously vague in the official academy literature. "I can't believe you're leaving us," Sarah said as Maya packed her belongings. The relationship between them had evolved from barely concealed hostility to genuine friendship over the past month. "Dragon Squad won't be the same without you." Derek stood nearby, his expression conflicted. "Are you sure about this?" "Alpha Division has a reputation for being intense. Some cadets who go there don't come back the same." Maya folded her few civilian clothes carefully into her duffel bag. "I need to see how far I can push myself. This feels like the right choice." What she didn't mention was the conversation she'd had with Admiral Rodriguez the previous evening. The Commandant had personally briefed Maya on Alpha Division's true purpose: to train cadets for unconventional warfare scenarios that regular military doctrine couldn't address. Deep space reconnaissance missions, first contact protocols with potentially hostile alien species, and operations in environments where standard tactics would mean certain death. "You've demonstrated an ability to think outside established parameters," Rodriguez had explained. "That kind of cognitive flexibility is rare and valuable. But Alpha Division will test you in ways that regular academy training cannot. Are you prepared for that? Maya had answered yes without hesitation, though she'd had no real idea what she was agreeing to. Her new quarters in Alpha Division were Spartanly functional, a small private room with a single bed, desk, and storage locker. No roommates, no common area for socializing. The 11 other cadets selected for the program were an interesting mix of backgrounds and specialties. But they all shared one thing in common. They'd each done something during regular training that suggested unusual potential. There was Kim Okafor, a brilliant engineer who'd figured out how to bypass 3 different security systems during a routine exercise. Marcus Chen, no relation to Maya despite the shared surname, had scored perfectly on every tactical assessment while displaying an almost supernatural ability to predict enemy movements. Elena Vasquez could pilot anything with engines and had once landed a damaged shuttle using only manual controls and intuition. Their instructor was someone Maya had never seen before, a compact woman with iron gray hair and scars that suggested extensive combat experience. She introduced herself simply as Commander Vale, with no mention of her background or credentials. Welcome to Alpha Division, Vale began on their first morning. You're here because standard military training isn't sufficient for the challenges you'll face in your careers. The galaxy is vast, full of unknowns, and often hostile to human preconceptions about how warfare should work. She activated a holographic display showing various alien combat scenarios, multi-dimensional battlefields, enemies that could phase through solid matter, and weapons that violated known physics. Your previous training focused on fighting human enemies using human tactics in human-friendly environments. Alpha Division will prepare you for everything else. You will learn to adapt, improvise, and survive in situations where your training manual is worse than useless. The first exercise seemed simple enough, a basic combat simulation, similar to what Maya had experienced with Dragon Squad. The difference became apparent immediately when their enemies turned out to be semi-sentient mechanical constructs that could learn and adapt to their tactics in real time. Maya's squad of 4 Alpha Division cadets found their initial assault completely neutralized within minutes as the enemy adapted to their approach. Standard flanking maneuvers failed when the constructs began predicting and countering them. Suppression fire became ineffective once the enemies learned to recognize the sound signatures of their weapons. "This is impossible," muttered Jensen, one of Maya's new squadmates. He was a former Special Forces recruit who dominated every previous training exercise through superior firepower and aggressive tactics. How are we supposed to fight enemies that adapt this fast? Maya was thinking the same thing, but from a different angle. On the farm, she'd dealt with animals that learned to avoid traps and escape routes. The key wasn't to outthink them. It was to make them overthink the situation. What if we deliberately establish patterns? She suggested during a brief tactical conference. Make the constructs adapt to something specific, then exploit their adaptation? That makes no sense, Jensen replied. Why would we want them to adapt? Maya pulled up their tactical display, showing the enemy positions. Because adaptation requires prediction. If we can control what they're adapting to, we can control their predictions. What followed was the most complex psychological warfare exercise Maya had ever attempted. Instead of trying to hide their tactics, her squad began deliberately establishing clear, recognizable patterns in their movements and attacks. The constructs quickly adapted, positioning themselves to counter these patterns. Then Maya's squad suddenly switched to completely different tactics that specifically exploited the construct's adaptive positioning. The enemies found themselves perfectly positioned to counter attacks that weren't coming while being vulnerable to assaults they hadn't predicted. The simulation ended with complete mission success and a new Alpha Division record for adaptive tactical innovation. Fascinating approach. Chen, Commander Vale noted during their debrief, where did that strategy originate? Animal behavior patterns, Maya replied. Predators often become predictable when they're focused on specific prey behaviors. If you can control their focus, you can control their vulnerabilities. Vale made notes on her tablet with obvious interest. You're thinking in terms of psychology rather than pure tactics. That's exactly the kind of cognitive flexibility we're trying to develop here. The training that followed pushed every member of Alpha Division beyond anything they'd experienced in regular academy courses. They faced scenarios involving time dilation effects that made coordination impossible, enemies that could manipulate gravity to negate traditional cover, and missions where their own equipment was compromised by alien technology. Maya found herself thriving in ways that surprised even her. Each impossible scenario was just another puzzle to solve, another system to understand and work around. Her farm background had taught her that every problem had a solution if you were willing to think creatively enough. The breakthrough moment came during a particularly challenging exercise involving first contact with a potentially hostile alien species. The simulation placed Alpha Division cadets in the role of diplomatic escorts who had to protect human negotiators while avoiding actions that could be interpreted as aggressive by beings whose psychology and motivations were completely unknown. Traditional military doctrine was useless. Any obvious defensive preparation could trigger a conflict, but leaving the diplomats unprotected was equally dangerous. Most teams who'd attempted this scenario had either failed to provide adequate protection or accidentally started wars through cultural misunderstandings. Maya approached the problem by focusing on communication rather than protection. Instead of positioning her team defensively around the human diplomats, she arranged them in patterns that mimicked the aliens' own formation structures. Rather than carrying obvious weapons, her squad used equipment that could serve dual purposes, tools that appeared peaceful but could become defensive if necessary. Most importantly, she established a communication protocol with the alien delegates that demonstrated awareness of their customs and respect for their concerns. When tensions began to rise during the negotiations, Maya's team was able to diffuse the situation through cultural sensitivity rather than superior firepower. The simulation ended with successful treaty negotiations and zero diplomatic incidents. More significantly, it established a new protocol for first contact scenarios that would be adopted by the entire Galactic Defense Force. "Outstanding work," Commander Vale announced to the assembled Alpha Division cadets. Chen's approach to this scenario demonstrates the kind of innovative thinking that can prevent interstellar conflicts before they begin. After the debriefing, Vale asked Maya to stay behind for a private conversation. "You've been here 6 weeks and your performance has been exceptional. But there's something else I need to discuss with you. How familiar are you with the concept of deep space reconnaissance?" Maya felt a chill of excitement. Deep space recon was legendary among military personnel. Small teams sent beyond the edges of known space to gather intelligence on potential threats and opportunities. It was dangerous, prestigious, and absolutely critical for humanity's expansion into the galaxy. "I know the basics," Maya replied carefully. "Long-duration missions in unexplored regions, minimal support, high risk?" Vale nodded. "There's a new program being developed. Ultra-long-range reconnaissance missions that could last years. Teams would need to be completely self-sufficient and capable of handling any situation they encounter without backup or guidance from command." The implications were staggering. Maya would be moving from Academy Cadet to Elite Special Forces Operator, skipping several years of traditional career progression. Beyond the edge, the Deep Space Reconnaissance program turned out to be more than Maya had imagined. Project Pathfinder was classified at the highest levels, known only to a select few within the Galactic Defense Force command structure. Maya learned this during her initial briefing in a secure facility, buried 3 levels beneath the Academy's main complex. "What you're about to see cannot leave this room," Admiral Rodriguez explained as she led Maya through multiple security checkpoints. "Pathfinder represents humanity's next evolutionary step in space exploration and defense." The briefing room contained holographic displays showing star charts that extended far beyond any territory Maya had seen before. Vast regions of unexplored space stretched out in all directions, marked with question marks and theoretical threat assessments. "Our current reconnaissance capabilities extend roughly 50 light-years from Earth," Rodriguez continued. "But sensor data suggests significant activity in regions much farther out. Possible alien civilizations, resource concentrations, and potential threats that we need to understand before they understand us." Maya studied the displays, trying to comprehend the scale of what was being proposed. "How far out are we talking about?" 500 to 1,000 light-years, replied a new voice. Maya turned to see a tall man in civilian clothes entering the room. "I'm Dr. Harrison Way, theoretical physicist and Pathfinder project director. The missions we're planning will take reconnaissance teams to regions of space that no human has ever seen. The technical challenges were staggering. Traditional faster-than-light travel required regular resupply and maintenance stops at established bases. Deep space reconnaissance teams would need to be completely self-sufficient for periods measured in years, not months. We've developed new technologies specifically for this program, Dr. Wei explained, activating another holographic display. Advanced life support systems, self-repairing equipment, and AI assistance programs that can help teams adapt to unexpected situations. But technology was only part of the equation. The human element was equally critical, which was why Pathfinder needed personnel who could think independently, adapt to impossible situations, and make crucial decisions without guidance from command. Your performance in Alpha Division suggests you have the psychological profile we need, Admiral, Rodriguez told Maya. But this is entirely voluntary. If selected, you'd be committing to a minimum 5-year tour of duty, much of it spent in unexplored space with no backup and no possibility of rescue if things go wrong. Maya felt her pulse quicken. Everything about Pathfinder appealed to her. The challenge, the independence, the chance to push beyond known boundaries. When would training begin? Immediately, Dr. Wei replied. Pathfinder teams require specialized preparation that goes beyond anything offered in regular military training. You'd be working with technologies that won't be available to general forces for decades. The next 6 months transformed Maya's understanding of what was possible. Pathfinder training took place in a facility that seemed more like a research laboratory than a military base. She learned to operate equipment that pushed the boundaries of known science. Personal shield generators, weapons that could function in exotic energy environments, and sensor systems sensitive enough to detect alien technology from light years away. More importantly, she learned to work as part of a 4-person team that would need to function perfectly in isolation for years at a time. Her teammates were carefully selected for complementary skills and psychological compatibility. There was Dr. Sarah Kim, a xenobiologist and former Academy cadet, who'd been recruited for Pathfinder after developing revolutionary theories about alien evolution patterns. Maya was surprised and pleased to discover her former Dragon Squad teammate had also been selected for the program. Commander Eric Larson served as team leader, a veteran of 3 previous deep space missions who'd volunteered for Pathfinder because he'd grown bored with conventional assignments. His experience with alien first contact protocols was invaluable. Finally, Chief Petty Officer Maria Santos handled technical systems and engineering. She could repair or modify virtually any piece of equipment using only basic tools and creative thinking. Perfect team composition, Dr. Wei observed during one of their training evaluations. Leadership, scientific expertise, technical capability, and tactical innovation. You complement each other's strengths while covering each other's weaknesses. The training scenarios they faced were unlike anything Maya had experienced before. Instead of fighting simulated enemies, they were dropped into completely unknown environments and asked to establish peaceful contact with alien species whose motivations and capabilities were entirely theoretical. One particularly challenging exercise placed them on a planet where the dominant species communicated through color patterns and considered any form of vocalization to be an act of aggression. Maya's team had to develop an entirely new communication protocol while simultaneously gathering intelligence about the species' technology, level, and territorial boundaries. Another scenario involved investigating a derelict alien spacecraft that contained technology far beyond human understanding. The challenge wasn't just figuring out how the systems worked, but determining whether the ship had been abandoned voluntarily, or if its crew had met some terrible fate that might threaten Maya's team. Through it all, Maya found herself naturally falling into the role of tactical specialist and cultural interpreter. Her ability to think beyond conventional parameters made her invaluable when dealing with truly alien situations. You have a gift for reading patterns, Commander Larson observed after a particularly successful training mission. It's like you can see connections that aren't obvious to the rest of us. Maya had been thinking about this herself. Her success wasn't just about farm experience or unconventional thinking. There was something deeper at work, an intuitive understanding of systems and relationships that seemed to apply whether she was dealing with escaped livestock, alien psychology, or advanced technology. I think it comes from growing up in an environment where everything was connected, she replied. On a farm, you learn that changing one thing affects everything else. Animals, crops, weather, equipment, it's all part of a larger system. And now you're applying that same thinking to galactic scale systems, Dr. Kim added. Alien civilizations, interstellar politics, technological development patterns. It's the same principle on a much larger scale. The final phase of Pathfinder training involved a simulated mission that lasted 3 months in real time. Maya's team was placed aboard a prototype reconnaissance vessel and sent to investigate a region of space that had been carefully constructed to mimic the unknowns they'd face on actual missions. The Wanderer was unlike any spacecraft Maya had ever seen. It was designed for extreme autonomy, with manufacturing capabilities that could produce almost any needed equipment from raw materials. The ship's AI was sophisticated enough to serve as a fifth team member, capable of independent research and analysis. Their simulated mission objective was to investigate signs of advanced alien activity in an unexplored star system while remaining undetected and gathering as much intelligence as possible. What they found exceeded everyone's expectations. The system contained evidence of not one but 3 different alien civilizations, each with distinct technology signatures and territorial boundaries. More intriguingly, there were signs that these species were engaged in some form of complex relationship, possibly trade, possibly conflict, possibly something entirely beyond human understanding. Maya's team spent weeks gathering data and developing theories about the aliens' capabilities and motivations. The breakthrough came when Maya noticed patterns in the species' territorial boundaries that suggested they weren't competing for resources but rather collaborating on some massive engineering project. Look at the orbital mechanics, she explained to her teammates during one of their analysis sessions. These aren't random settlements. The 3 species have positioned their facilities to create a specific geometric pattern around the system's primary star. Dr. Kim ran the calculations, and her eyes widened. Maya's right. They're building something that requires precise gravitational manipulation. But the scale? Maya's right. They're building something that requires precise gravitational manipulation. But the scale is enormous. It would take centuries to complete. The implications were staggering. They discovered evidence of a multi-species collaboration on a project that dwarfed anything humanity had ever attempted. More importantly, they'd done so without being detected, gathering intelligence that could be crucial for future human expansion into this region of space. Outstanding work, Dr. Wei announced when they returned from the simulation. Your team demonstrated exactly the kind of analytical capability and operational discretion that Pathfinder missions require. Admiral Rodriguez was even more direct in her assessment. You've exceeded our expectations in every category. Congratulations, you're now officially assigned to Pathfinder Team 7. Maya felt a surge of pride and excitement. She'd come so far from the farm girl who'd been dismissed by her academy classmates. Now she was preparing for missions that would take humanity to the very edge of the known galaxy. But with that excitement came soberness about what lay ahead. Real Pathfinder missions wouldn't have the safety nets of training exercises. Once they launched, Maya and her team would be truly alone in the vast darkness of space, relying entirely on their skills, equipment, and each other. The farm girl who'd been laughed at by her academy classmates was about to become one of humanity's most elite explorers. Maya smiled as she thought about how much she'd grown since those early days at the academy. The real adventures were just beginning. First contact 8 months after completing Pathfinder training, Maya found herself standing in the observation deck of the UES Wanderer, watching an alien star system grow larger through the reinforced transparasteel windows. After 18 months of faster-than-light travel, Pathfinder Team 7 had reached their destination, a region of space over 800 light-years from Earth where long-range sensors had detected signs of advanced civilization. Final approach in 6 hours, announced Commander Larson from the bridge. All team members report to stations for pre-mission briefing. Maya took one last look at the alien sun, a blue-white giant that cast an eerie glow across the ship's hull. Somewhere in this system were beings that humanity had never encountered, possessing technology that might be centuries ahead of or behind human development. In a few hours, she would help determine whether these aliens represented an opportunity for peaceful contact or a potential threat to human expansion. The briefing room felt cramped with all 4 team members present, but the intimacy was intentional. After nearly 2 years together, Pathfinder Team 7 had developed the kind of coordination that only came from complete trust and shared experience. Sensor analysis confirms our initial assessment, reported Dr. Kim. Pulling up holographic displays of the star system. 7 planets, 3 of which show clear signs of industrial activity. The technological signatures suggest a civilization that's achieved interplanetary travel but hasn't yet developed faster than light capabilities. Chief Santos added technical details from her engineering scans. Their energy production is based on something we don't recognize. Not fusion, not antimatter, but something that generates enormous power from relatively small installations. If we could understand their technology, it might revolutionize human energy systems. Maya studied the tactical implications while her teammates discussed the scientific opportunities. The aliens were advanced enough to be dangerous, but not so advanced that they could threaten human space directly. More importantly, they seemed to be contained within their own star system, suggesting they might be willing to engage in peaceful contact rather than immediate expansion. "What's our approach strategy?" she asked Commander Larson. "Standard Pathfinder protocol," he replied. "Extended observation period to understand their communication methods and social structures, then gradual introduction of our presence. We'll start by monitoring their transmissions and trying to decode their language." The observation phase lasted 3 weeks. Maya's team positioned the Wanderer at the edge of the star system, using passive sensors to gather information while remaining undetected. What they learned was fascinating and troubling in equal measure. The aliens appeared to be engaged in some form of civil conflict. Their 3 inhabited worlds were broadcasting different communication signatures and showing signs of military buildup. Energy readings suggested weapon systems that could devastate entire continents, and their orbital infrastructure was being rapidly militarized. "We're looking at a species on the brink of interplanetary war," Dr. Kim observed during one of their analysis sessions. "The question is whether we should make contact now or wait for the situation to resolve itself." Maya had been thinking about this problem for days. Standard first contact protocol called for approaching aliens during peaceful periods to minimize the risk of being perceived as a threat, but waiting might mean watching an entire civilization destroy itself. "What if the war is exactly why we need to make contact?" she suggested. "Our presence might provide them with a new perspective that could prevent catastrophic conflict." Commander Larson looked skeptical. "Or our arrival could unite them against a common external threat. That's happened before in human history." "Not necessarily," Maya replied, pulling up her own analysis of the aliens' communication patterns. "Look at their broadcast signatures. They're not trying to jam each other's transmissions or disrupt their communications. This looks more like a political dispute than a total war scenario." She'd spent hours studying the aliens' transmission patterns, looking for clues about their psychology and social structure. What she'd found suggested a species that valued communication and negotiation even during conflicts. "I think they might be willing to listen to outside perspective," Maya continued, "especially if we approach them as neutral mediators rather than potential conquerors." The debate continued for several days before Commander Larson made the decision to attempt contact. Maya's analysis had convinced him that the aliens' current crisis might actually make them more receptive to peaceful contact, not less. The first contact attempt was carefully orchestrated. Instead of approaching any of the 3 worlds directly, Maya's team broadcast a simple mathematical message from the edge of the star system. The message was designed to demonstrate intelligence without suggesting threat, basic mathematical concepts that any advanced civilization would recognize. The response came within hours. All 3 alien worlds simultaneously ceased their military transmissions and began broadcasting identical mathematical responses. Whatever their political differences, they were united in their fascination with the arrival of an outside intelligence. "Fascinating," Dr. Kim observed as she analyzed the alien responses. "They've stopped their conflict entirely to focus on us." Maya was right about their psychology. What followed was the most complex communication challenge Maya had ever faced. Over the course of several weeks, her team gradually established a basic language protocol with the aliens. The process was slow and sometimes frustrating, but the aliens showed remarkable patience and creativity in developing new ways to exchange information. The breakthrough came when Maya realized that the aliens communicated using complex mathematical relationships rather than simple symbolic language. Their entire thought process was based on numerical concepts that described relationships between ideas rather than the ideas themselves. It's like they think in equations, she explained to her teammates. Instead of saying we are peaceful, they're expressing mathematical relationships that describe the concept of peace as a stable equilibrium between opposing forces. Once Maya's team understood this fundamental difference in thinking, communication became much easier. They learned that the aliens called themselves the HFY, and that their current conflict was actually a philosophical debate about the best mathematical approach to organizing their society. More importantly, the HFY were fascinated by human mathematical concepts and eager to learn about their approach to solving complex problems. The possibility of cultural and scientific exchange quickly overshadowed their internal political disputes. "This is incredible," Dr. Kim reported during one of their daily briefings with the HFY. "They've developed mathematical techniques that could revolutionize human physics and engineering, and they're eager to share their knowledge in exchange for our own mathematical insights." The first face-to-face meeting took place on a neutral asteroid between the HFY worlds. Maya's team took a shuttle to the designated coordinates, where they found a sophisticated but non-threatening alien station waiting for them. The HFY themselves were unlike anything in human experience. They were silicon-based rather than carbon-based, with crystalline structures that could reconfigure themselves to express different mathematical concepts. Their communication involved complex light patterns that conveyed multiple layers of meaning simultaneously. Maya found herself serving as the primary interpreter during the meetings, her pattern recognition skills allowing her to understand the HFY's mathematical communication more quickly than her teammates. The aliens seemed to appreciate her intuitive grasp of their thought processes. "You think in harmonious patterns," one of the HFY representatives told her during their third meeting. "Most of your species appears to think in sequential steps, but you perceive the complete equation simultaneously." Over the following months, Maya's team established the framework for ongoing contact between humanity and the HFY. The aliens were willing to share their advanced energy technologies in exchange for human insights into biological systems and social organization. More importantly, they expressed interest in eventually meeting other human representatives to establish formal diplomatic relations. "This could change everything," Commander Larson observed as they prepared to return to human space. The HFY's energy technology alone could solve humanity's power needs for centuries, and their mathematical insights might unlock scientific advances we can't even imagine yet. Maya felt a deep sense of satisfaction as she watched the HFY star system grow smaller in the Wanderer's rear sensors. She'd gone from being the underestimated farm girl at the academy to playing a crucial role in humanity's first successful deep space first contact mission. But more than personal achievement, she felt proud of what they'd accomplished together. Her team had prevented a potential alien civil war, established peaceful relations with an advanced civilization, and opened possibilities for scientific and cultural exchange that could benefit both species for generations to come. The journey back to human space would take another 18 months, giving Maya plenty of time to compile their reports and prepare for the briefings that would follow their return. She knew that their success would likely lead to more Pathfinder missions, more opportunities to push beyond the boundaries of known space. As the alien star faded into the vast darkness behind them, Maya smiled at the thought of what lay ahead. The girl who'd been laughed at by her academy classmates had become one of humanity's most accomplished explorers. And this was only the beginning of her adventures among the stars. Legacy of the stars. 5 years after her return from the HFY mission, Maya stood before a new class of academy cadets in the same lecture hall, where she'd once struggled to prove herself. But now she wore the insignia of a full commander and bore the unofficial title of humanity's leading expert on alien first contact protocols. The young faces looking up at her reminded Maya of herself during those early, uncertain days at the academy. She could see the same mix of excitement, nervousness, and determination that had driven her to push beyond everyone's expectations. Some of these cadets would wash out, others would find their calling in traditional military roles, and a select few might one day join the expanding Pathfinder program. First contact with an alien species is never routine, Maya began, activating the holographic displays that showed images from the HFY mission. Every species we encounter will challenge our assumptions about intelligence, communication, and the very nature of consciousness itself. The HFY exchange program had transformed human technology and scientific understanding. Their mathematical approach to energy manipulation had indeed revolutionized human power systems, while human biological insights had helped the HFY develop new techniques for crystal matrix optimization. More importantly, the successful partnership had provided a template for future first contact scenarios. Maya's presentation included footage from 3 subsequent Pathfinder missions that had resulted in peaceful contact with alien civilizations. Each encounter had been different, requiring teams to adapt their approaches based on radically different alien psychologies and social structures. The key to successful first contact isn't superior technology or military strength, Maya explained to the attentive cadets. It's the ability to think beyond your own cultural assumptions and find common ground with beings who might be fundamentally different from anything in human experience. After the lecture, Maya was approached by a small cadet who reminded her strongly of herself 6 years earlier. The girl was clearly nervous but determined to ask her question. "Commander Chen," she began hesitantly, "I'm from a mining colony on the edge of human space. My background isn't like most of the other cadets here. Do you think that's a disadvantage?" Maya smiled, remembering her own fears about fitting in among the children of military families and elite academies. "What's your name, cadet?"
Zara Okonkwo, ma'am.
"I grew up on Kepler-12, helping my family extract rare minerals from asteroid fields. And what skills did that work teach you?" Zara thought for a moment. "Patience, I suppose. Problem-solving when equipment fails in dangerous environments. Understanding how different systems work together. But nothing that seems relevant to military training." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "Those skills are exactly what made me successful in first contact scenarios. The ability to remain calm under pressure, to improvise solutions with limited resources, and to see connections between different systems. Those are core competencies for any officer who wants to push beyond conventional assignments." She could see the spark of hope in Zara's eyes, the same feeling Maya had experienced when Sergeant Torres first recognized her potential. "Your background isn't a disadvantage," Maya continued. "It's a different perspective that could prove invaluable when dealing with situations that standard military doctrine can't address. The galaxy is vast and full of unknowns. We need officers who can think differently." After Zara left, Maya made her way to Admiral Rodriguez's office for their monthly briefing on Pathfinder program developments. The Admiral, now in her 70s but still sharp as a laser cutter, had become one of Maya's strongest supporters and advocates. "How was the lecture?" Rodriguez asked as Maya settled into the familiar chair across from her desk. "Inspiring, I hope. There are some promising cadets in this year's class. I think we might find a few candidates for advanced training." Rodriguez nodded approvingly. "Good, we'll need them. The Pathfinder program is expanding faster than we initially projected. We now have 12 active teams operating in different regions of unexplored space, and early reports suggest there are far more alien civilizations out there than we ever imagined." The implications were staggering. When Maya had first joined Pathfinder, the program was experimental, with uncertain prospects for success. Now it had become one of humanity's most important military and diplomatic initiatives, responsible for establishing contact with 7 different alien species and preventing at least 3 potential conflicts through careful mediation. "There's something else," Rodriguez continued, her expression becoming more serious. "We've received a transmission from Pathfinder Team 3. They've encountered something unprecedented. An alien species that appears to have achieved faster-than-light travel using principles completely different from our own." Maya felt her pulse quicken. FTL-capable aliens represented both enormous opportunity and potential threat. If they were peaceful, they could share knowledge that might revolutionize human space travel. If they were hostile, they could threaten human colonies across a vast region of space. What's their assessment of the situation? Preliminary contact has been established, but the aliens are cautious. They seem to be evaluating humanity's technological and cultural development before deciding whether to share their advanced knowledge. Team 3 has requested a specialist in alien psychology to assist with the contact process. Maya already knew where this conversation was heading. "You want me to join them?" The mission would require at least 3 years of deep space travel, possibly longer depending on how the contact develops. It would mean leaving Earth again just when your career here is reaching its full potential. Rodriguez leaned back in her chair, studying Maya's expression. The choice is entirely yours. Maya thought about the comfortable life she'd built for herself. Her position at the academy was prestigious and rewarding. She had a small apartment overlooking the training grounds where she'd first proven herself. And she'd developed friendships among the faculty that meant a great deal to her. But she also thought about the vast unknown regions of space that still waited to be explored, and the alien civilizations that humanity had yet to encounter. Most of all, she thought about the young cadet who'd approached her after the lecture, looking for reassurance that her unconventional background could become a strength rather than a weakness. "When does the mission depart?" Maya asked. Rodriguez smiled, apparently unsurprised by Maya's response. "Transport leaves in 6 weeks. That should give you enough time to complete your current teaching obligations and prepare for extended deep space deployment." As Maya walked back across the academy grounds, she reflected on how much her life had changed since those early days as an underestimated cadet. The farm girl who'd been dismissed by her classmates had become one of humanity's most accomplished space explorers, responsible for establishing peaceful relations with multiple alien species and helping to shape the future of human expansion into the galaxy. More importantly, she'd proven that unconventional backgrounds and different ways of thinking weren't weaknesses to be overcome, but strengths to be developed and applied. Her success had opened doors for other cadets who might have been overlooked by traditional military evaluation systems. The academy buzzed with its usual activity as evening approached. Young cadets hurried between classes and training sessions, some struggling with the demanding pace while others seemed to thrive on the challenge. Maya watched them with a mixture of nostalgia and anticipation, remembering her own journey from uncertain outsider to confident leader. In 6 weeks, she would once again venture into the unknown depths of space, carrying humanity's hopes for peaceful contact with beings whose capabilities and motivations remained mysterious. It was exactly the kind of challenge that had always appealed to her, complex, uncertain, and requiring every skill she'd developed over years of pushing beyond conventional boundaries. Maya smiled as she entered the academy building, already beginning to plan for the mission ahead. The girl who'd been laughed at by her classmates was about to embark on her most important adventure yet. And somewhere in the current class of cadets, another underestimated young person was probably discovering that their unconventional background might be exactly what humanity needed for the challenges that lay ahead. Among the stars, the legacy of the farm girl who'd become a star explorer would continue, carried forward by new generations of officers who understood that the greatest discoveries often came from those who thought differently about the problems everyone else considered impossible to solve.